Wagyu A5 is the best beef in the world.
Okay.
But what if I told you that within Wagyu A5, there's actually some pretty tough cuts that usually end up as scraps for ground beef? What I have in front of me is the cheapest Wagyu A5 roast I could possibly find, and today we're putting it up against an unexpected competitor. In today's challenge, we're putting the worst Wagyu A5 steak up against the very best grass-fed steak. And as always, at the end of the video, I'll be doing a completely blind taste test to see which one comes out on top. And with that, let's get started. First things first, we gotta talk about what I have in front of me right here. This thing is an absolute beast. This is a Wagyu A5 BMS 12 top round. It's from Japan and the marbling is literally as high as it gets. When we talk about marbling, we're referring to that intramuscular fat that runs throughout the meat. And as you can see on this side, it's kind of moving this way with the grain. When we flip it around, you can see how here we're more against the grain and that marbling really shows up. I mean, the pattern on this thing is just ridiculous. Now let's talk about the difference between the grade and the cut. For our reference, what we have here is a choice grade top round. Even though there is some exterior fat, it is an extremely lean cut with very little marbling. It's quite tough and really only used for things like burgers and jerky. So while yes, the cuts are the same on these two, the grades are completely different. In America, beef is graded as either select, choice, or prime. Select being the least marbled, prime being the most. This one right here is choice. In Japan, beef is graded completely differently, starting from A1 to A5, which is this cut right here. And not to get too specific, but within that grading scale, there is something called BMS. A5 can fall between 8 and 12, 12 being the highest. This right here is 12, meaning it literally maxes out the chart. So now that we know that cut and grade are completely different, let's look at some other Wagyu A5 cuts. Oh yeah, there's one. Well, I just rummaged deep into the depths of my freezer and found every single Wagyu A5 cut that I have. So again, these are all completely different cuts, but all the same grade Wagyu A5. This right here is a Wagyu A5 short rib, Wagyu A5 Denver steak. We have a Wagyu A5 bavette. Up next, we have a Wagyu A5 tri-tip. We have a Wagyu A5 brisket flat. And last but not least, some of you guys may remember we have our Wagyu A5 spam. Definitely not a cut, nor is it really a grade, but I hope this helped explain the difference between cut and grade. But I also gotta give a huge shout out to my guys over at Alpine Butcher. They've been my trusted source for Wagyu since day one. A big shout out to them. All right, I gotta be honest, I am absolutely dying to slice into this thing, but first we gotta learn about the challenger, the grass-fed steaks. What exactly is a grass-fed steak? And this is where things get a little controversial. So you may have gone to the store and seen a grass-fed steak, but oftentimes they're actually misleading you. These are cows that may have started their life on the pasture eating grass, but towards the end, they're fed a whole bunch of grain to fatten them up. So they may be grass-fed, but grain finished. Now, a true grass-fed steak lived the entirety of its life on the pasture, under the sun, and for the entirety of its life, it only ate grass. And these steaks right here are both 100% grass-fed steaks.
That means these cows are technically vegan, right? AKA you're vegan?
By the transitive property, I think I am officially vegan.
Love that.
So this steak right here is super unique. It's from Masami Ranch. It's actually from an older cow, so it's a 5-year-old mother cow. And because it is a little bit older, it's gonna give us some really interesting flavors. As you can see, it's quite lean. There's actually a decent amount of marbling in it, but it also has that really deep red color that's consistent with all grass-fed steaks. On top of this, it's also a ribeye, which is the most premium cut. Now let's move over to this steak over here. And this is where Max starts to get very excited. Even though this is grass-fed, the marbling on it is unbelievable. And that is because it actually has some of the genetics of a Japanese Wagyu cow. So it's essentially an Australian Wagyu steak, but unlike most of its counterparts, it's completely grass-fed, giving it that incredible marbling. What it means is we get a combo of that Wagyu richness, but also that grass-fed flavor. These grass-fed steaks are gonna be the perfect challengers to our cheap Wagyu A5 steak. Okay, and it is just about time to cook, but first, let's quickly touch on price. Starting here with the choice grade top round, this is a super cheap cut. It's gonna go for anywhere from probably $3 to $6 a pound. Very, very cheap. Compare that to the Wagyu A5 top round. Now, this one goes for north of $60 a pound, so way more expensive than this one. However, when it comes to Wagyu A5, this is extremely cheap. Typically, Wagyu A5 is gonna go for north of 150, especially for like a ribeye or something. Moving over here to the grass-fed, This Masami Ranch ribeye is gonna go for about 25 bucks a pound, so maybe a little bit more expensive than a typical grass-fed steak. Lastly, we have our Australian Wagyu grass-fed strip loin. This one goes for north of $60 a pound. Super, super expensive when it comes to grass-fed. And the beautiful thing is, it's the exact same price as our Wagyu A5 top round. So that sets us up for a perfect competition to figure out which one's best. And it is finally time to cook. Now, our grass-fed steaks, a ribeye and a strip, they're tender cuts. We're gonna keep it very traditional. No need to worry about those right now. However, this top round is a tough cut, so we're gonna actually experiment with 4 unique methods to see if we can make it better than our grass-fed steak. Now, to slice this roast, we could use a normal knife, but why use a normal knife when you have a tuna slicer? Get my stance. Wow, I gotta say, the marbling on this steak is just stupendous. I mean, this is unlike anything I have ever seen in my entire life. It's also just such a huge steak, so that marbling is so pronounced. So the first method we're gonna use to cook this is to smoke it, and I think I'm just gonna use this front nub here to be the piece that we use for it. Wow. This piece right here, I'll set aside to smoke. The next method we'll use is keeping it completely traditional and cooking it like a steak. I'm gonna try keeping it to medium rare, even though it's a tough cut. We'll see how it turns out considering it's Wagyu A5. Beautiful. Okay, next up is the third method, and we are going to sous vide a steak. Just about a 1-inch steak right here. Perfect for sous vide. For the final preparation, we're gonna do thinly sliced Korean barbecue style, and I'll just take off this little side piece here and cut some thin slices. Okay, and what we are left with are 1, 2, 3, 4 unique slices of our Wagyu A5 top round. These 4 slices represent 4 unique cooking methods that we'll be doing with them. Then over here, we of course have our 2 grass-fed steaks. First thing to do is to season them, and we're gonna keep them all the exact same, keeping it super simple. Now, I really want to taste the flavor of the meat here, so I'll start by just seasoning them all with some kosher salt. And of course, some black pepper. We are all seasoned up, they're looking incredible. Time for the first cooking method. And steak number 1 is going to be sous vide. Now imagine a world where your steak is out on vacation, it's hanging out, it's by the pool, maybe by the hot tub, it's just chilling, it's just hanging out in the water. That is sous vide. That is exactly what we're gonna do to it. It's gonna hang out in this beautiful warm hot tub for probably close to 24 hours. Now there are 2 primary benefits to sous vide. The first is that you get a precise internal temp with perfect edge-to-edge doneness. The second is that you can actually increase tenderness by sous viding for a long period of time. It allows us to cook tough cuts to medium rare, but if we leave it in there for 10, 20, even 30 hours, we can make it super tender, and that's the plan here. Our steak is in, and I've set it to 135 Fahrenheit, which is actually medium rare. Now, typically, if you were to cook a top round to medium rare, it would come out super, super tough. However, because we're leaving this in there for close to 20 hours, it should have a tenderizing effect and hopefully give it a chance against the grass-fed. Okay, for cooking process number 2, we are going to smoke this one. Let's get on the grill. Just like the sous vide, this is a long and slow cooking process, which will hopefully make it more tender. 250F grill, and I'll probably pull this around 165F internal. With our steak on the grill, time for a quick note from Max Jerky. So right now we are taking new flavor recommendations. So drop your most unique ones down below. I'm gonna choose one person and give away 31 bags of jerky. I'm turning 31. Also, be sure to check out maxjerky.com for our 4 flavors. Let's get back to the video. Okay, and process number 3, we have our thinly sliced Wagyu A5 going direct heat on the grill, Korean barbecue style. The goal here is to keep our heat high and get a really nice crust. And we're probably gonna end up cooking this to well done just because the slices are so thin, but that should work out fine because it's gonna help to tenderize the meat. Flipping frequently, and these look just about perfect. And for our 4th and final step, we are gonna be cooking our Wagyu A5 steak to medium rare, completely traditional on a cast iron pan. Like usual, the priority here is to develop a really nice crust, flipping frequently, and we're also gonna butter baste. But it'll be very interesting to see if this one comes out tender because of that ridiculous marbling. And last but not least, we're gonna cook up our grass-fed steaks as the control, and we're also gonna cook them on a cast iron to medium rare. Because these steaks are a ribeye and a strip, I know they're gonna come out somewhat tender. The real question here is how they'll compare to the Wagyu A5. And just like that, steak number 1 is complete. Our Wagyu A5 top round has been sous videing at 135 Fahrenheit for just about 20 full hours. It has never gotten over that temperature, so we know it's cooked perfectly. Let's see what we got. Little Guga shout out. It might not look that good right now, but watch this. Sous vide steaks tend to look a bit funky, especially before being seared. Have no fear, this is completely normal. Let's slice. So it does feel tender as I slice it, but I gotta be honest, it is looking a little bit gray, especially for a steak that was only cooked to 135 degrees Fahrenheit. But either way, it still looks juicy, and really the only thing that matters is the taste. And at this point, I think our smoked Wagyu A5 top round is just about done. Our steak has been smoking for just about 3 hours, and I gotta say the color on it is looking great. It almost smells like bacon, and it just reached 170F internal. Time to slice. And slicing into this thing, I mean, it is just insanely juicy. Yes, it's completely cooked to well done, but because of all that marbling, it is completely full of moisture. I have a feeling this one is going to be hard to beat. Next up, time to slice our traditional cast iron Wagyu A5 top round. And as you can see, we've developed incredible crust. A lot of that has to do with the fat content. I find that highly marbled steaks allow us to quickly develop crust. And slicing into it, it actually feels pretty tender. Even though this is traditionally a tough cut, and cooking it to medium rare would usually be shoe leather, I also have pretty high hopes for this one. And next up, let's check out our Korean barbecue top round. Pretty decent color on them. I'm a little concerned with how thinly I sliced them and if they'll still be juicy, and we'll have to see how they taste. Next up, let's move on to the grass-fed steaks. Starting with the regular grass-fed, this one was a lot thicker than some of our other steaks, but as you can see, it still has that really nice red interior. This is the deep red color we expect when we cook grass-fed steaks. And last but not least, the Wagyu grass-fed steak. Once again, a really nice medium rare. And just like that, our 5 steaks are all complete. 4 Wagyu A5 top rounds, all cooked in very different ways. And of course, our 2 grass-fed steaks. The only thing left to do is the taste test. And it is time for the taste test. We got our taste tester Ty here. What tastes better, cheap Wagyu or expensive grass-fed? Let's do it. Give me a steak at random, please. Number 1. It has that grass-fed tint to it, but it's still very rich. That's the Wagyu grass-fed. Number 2. Wow. 1000% smoked one. Wow, I can't believe that's a top round. That is insane. Number 3. That's the Korean barbecue. Number 4. That is as tender as a tenderloin. That's gotta be the sous vide. Number 5. The regular grass-fed, the non-Wagyu grass-fed. It definitely has that little tang to it, but it is surprisingly good. Number 6. It is still, I mean, that's as tender as a normal ribeye, but it has that richness from the Wagyu. That one's the medium rare Wagyu A5 top round. How'd we do?
100%.
That's our first ever 100%. But what does it mean? What does it all mean? So I have to say they were all phenomenal. I'm leaning towards the Wagyu A5 across the board. The smoked one was probably my favorite. To me, it's sort of a hack. What this means is you can buy cheap Wagyu A5 and it'll still be absolutely incredible. You can spend closer to 60, 70, 80 bucks and still phenomenal. What we learned, cheap Wagyu, better than expensive grass-fed. Hope this helps you in your steak cooking adventures in the future. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to drop a like. Throw me a comment down there as well if you enjoyed it.
Smash that subscribe button.
Also, don't forget to comment your jerky flavor recommendation down below. One lucky person will win something big. And with that, I'll see you next time. Bye. I'll see you next time.